This session is being recorded. Hello, and welcome to the American Psychological Association series on careers in applied psychology. I'm Dr. Betsy Schoenfeld, a University Distinguished Professor and a performance psychologist at Western Kentucky University. I'm representing the APA Office of Applied Psychology. Today, we have a very exciting panel on careers in sport, exercise, and performance psychologists. We have 6 panelists representing different careers in SEP psychology. First, we have Dr. Brandon Harris, who's the Graduate Program Director and Professor of Sport and Exercise Psychology at Georgia Southern University. Brandon will provide an overview of the field of sport, exercise, and performance psych. Next, Dr. Angel Brutus, who's the Associate Director of Mental Health at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, will discuss her career path to the USOPC, including her role in the University Athletic Department. Next, Dr. Elmer Castillo, who is a Master Resilience Trainer and a performance expert and a contractor with the U.S. Army, will discuss performance psychology in the military. Abby Keenan is a mental performance consultant with Intrepid Performance Consulting. She will discuss her role as a master's level performance consultant. Dr. Sam Zizi is the Endowed Professor of Sport and Exercise Psychology at West Virginia University. He will discuss the role of a university faculty member in exercise psychology. Then batting cleanup, last and certainly not least, is Dr. Kinza Gunter, who's a clinical and sports psychologist with Gunter Psychological Services, LLC. She will discuss her career in private practice and her role working with professional sports. Brandon, who is the current APA Division 47 president, which is Division 47 is the Division of Sport, Exercise, and Performance Psychology. Brandon has developed laryngitis. So I'm going to pinch hit for him and discuss, provide a brief overview into sport, exercise, and performance psychology. The discipline of SEP psychology is a scientific study of the psychological factors that influence and are influenced by participation in sport, exercise, and physical activity. And importantly, the practical application of this scientific knowledge to increase performance, health, and well-being. Those in sport and performance psychology focus more on research and practice to improve performance in high demand contexts such as sports, the military, and the performing arts. In exercise psychology, the focus is more on the application of psychological and exercise science to increase health and well-being through regular participation in physical activity. We might say that there are 3 objectives of SEP psychology. First is the science. We conduct research to learn how psychological factors affect performance, including both the antecedents or the influence or causes of good and poor performance, and the psychological outcomes, both the benefits and the detriments of good and poor performance. We use this science to understand how participation affects psychological development, health, and well-being. And probably most important, we develop interventions based on this science to enhance performance, participation, and personal growth. Here are some examples of SEP interventions. We might teach mental skills to athletes or teams, skills such as positive self-talk, attention control, focus, goal setting, imagery or visualization, and relaxation. We might work with a team to identify their team values and set strategic season goals, or help them develop team leadership skills. We might develop and implement training programs using mental skills for things such as free throw shooting in basketball, or serving in tennis or volleyball. Or we might develop a health and wellness program for community fitness centers. There are many other examples. So we're here today to talk about the career path in sport, exercise, and performance psychology. Typically, we talk about 2 different career paths, the educational career path and the clinical career path. The educational career path addresses mental skills training and performance enhancement. Individuals in this path earn a master's degree or a PhD in sport psychology, sport science, or exercise science or kinesiology. They administer sport and performance enhancement interventions for individuals and teams, and they might be called a mental coach. They work with athletes at different levels, including youth, high school, college, Olympic, professional, or recreational. The clinical career path, those individuals work with athletes to address mental health and well-being, and they also include mental skills training. They have a degree in clinical or counseling psychology, in addition to training in sports psychology. And to work as a clinical sports psychologist, you need to be a licensed psychologist, a licensed professional counselor, or a licensed clinical social worker. Individuals who are clinical sports psychologists address mental health issues that may affect sports performance and or other aspects of their lives outside of sports. So where do SCP psychologists work? Well, they can be found in colleges and universities. They're faculty members who teach and conduct research, and they may work with intercollegiate athletes. They may be in university counseling centers where they work with athletes and also other college students, or they may be found in university athletic departments where they may serve as a clinical sports psychologist or as a performance psychologist. SCP psychologists also work in professional sports, for example, for Major League Baseball, NFL teams, NBA teams, WNBA teams, and the National Women's Soccer League teams. SCP psychologists serve as consultants to exercisers, athletes, and others in high demand performance domains, such as performing arts, where they might work with dancers or musicians or actors. In the medical arts, where they might work with surgeons or surgical teams or other medical teams. In business, where they might work in corporate wellness programs or with stress management or team building. And they may also work with first responders, including police, firefighters, and EMTs. Interestingly, the largest employer of SCP psychologists is the US military. Well, hopefully this overview has provided you with some understanding of careers in SCP psychology, and I hope it sparked your interest to hear from other SCP psychologists about their careers, and our panel members will do just that. Next, we'll hear from Dr. Angel Brutus and her career path to the USOPC, including her role in a university athletic department. Thank you, Angel.
Nice. Thank you for having me. So yeah, we'll just kind of dive right into it. So again, Angel Brutus. My credentials are actually, I'm a licensed professional counselor by trade, by way of being a certified rehabilitation counselor. And then at some point went back to school and got my doctorate in sport and performance psychology. My career path was very interesting, to say the least. I actually started out working with individuals specifically with disabilities across the disability spectrum. And so whether it's physical, sensory, cognitive, learning, you name it. However, that was the gateway to eventually getting into the world of sports psychology, specifically because I was working in private practice alongside of a psychologist with individuals who were diagnosed with different types of disabilities, specifically ADD, LD, attention deficit disorder, as well as learning disabilities. And those individuals happen to be Division I prospects. And unfortunately for them, their academic performances were starting to have an impact and an influence on the types of schooling options that they had. And so, I was able to provide a lot of intervention services, behavioral interventions that helped in that particular realm. And I felt like I was missing something in order to really understand the complex nature of being an athlete, specifically an athlete with a diagnosis. And so was able to go back to school and pursue sport and performance psychology at the doctorate level. And over the years, moving and transitioning from private practice, I ended up taking a position with the university athletic department, where I was their first full-time staff member to be able to build a program from the ground up. And so being able to take that entrepreneurial spirit, that business-minded spirit, and be able to really bring some innovative approaches to integrating the work that we do in terms of counseling as well as sports psychology within an athletic department. And in that particular environment, it can be really easy to think that you're only providing services to the athlete population, but really you provide an opportunity to support the health of the entire system. And so with that, I was able to do a little bit of wellness work and provide wellness initiatives for the athletic staff across the spectrum. So getting to know people who worked in the ticketing office, as well as the athletic directors were sitting there and becoming students of mine in terms of really understanding what was necessary to be able to have a holistic and healthy approach to the work that they did, because ultimately the work that they do has an impact and an influence on the student athlete experience in the athletic setting. And so that was really exciting to be able to do that. and being able to address concerns that came up, not just from a mental illness standpoint, but also from a mental wellness standpoint as well, and all the things that come in between that spectrum. And over the course of the years, that led to the opportunity to join the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, where I now serve as Associate Director of Mental Health Services, looking at things from a clinical lens, being able to understand what clinical presentations look like in a sport population, specifically at the elite level, is really fun, and continuing to learn all of the different pieces of the system that are impacted by how much our athletes continue to not only deal with and address mental health concerns, but also approach the wellness pieces as well to be able to perform at a high level.
Thank you, Angel. You certainly had a very interesting career, and we appreciate you sharing it with us. Next, we'll hear from Elmer Castillo, who is a master resilience trainer and performance expert, working as a contractor in the U.S. Army. Thank you, Elmer.
Thank you. Appreciate the invitation. Yep. So as Betsy mentioned, I'm a contractor with the U.S. Army, performance expert. I work at the R2 Performance Center at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. So first and foremost, I'll start with my pathway. So within the introduction, we covered the clinical career path and the educational career path. So I'm coming from the educational career path. I started in the exercise science realm, just really understanding exercise physiology, working as a clinical exercise physiologist in a cardiology clinic. Did that for about a year, doing exercise testing, prescription, pulmonary lung function testing, really fun stuff. But after doing that for a while, I did some soul searching and realized that I'm just in love with human performance and trying to understand and capture the full scope of the pursuit of excellence and adaptation and performance. And I noticed that a gap for me was the psychological component. And I always realized that I love psychology, just even, psychology 101 courses. So when I stumbled upon this particular specialty, this discipline of sport, exercise, performance psychology, the rest is history. So did my master's at University of Central Florida, like I said, in exercise phys. And then my doctoral, I did that at Florida State University in sport and performance psychology. So that's my educational pathway. Now, in terms of what I do, so in my role, I help soldiers, I help individuals, groups, military units apply performance psychology principles, research, interventions to optimize performance, both in military training and military operations. So translation for all that is when it matters most, when they're being evaluated, when there's risk inherent, when somebody's life might even be on the line in this line of work. Now, I can't say I have a typical day, so this ranges and this is always going to change, but it's one of the things that I love. So what I tend to do in my job, just to give an idea, is one of my favorite things to do is go out and observe, just go out and observe and support the different trainings, the different elements, the different activities that are going on for that day. So in a way, it's like I don't have an office and I conduct most of my training and most of my work out in the open and out in the field, which I really like and enjoy. So that's been an aspect that has been extremely rewarding for me. I feel like there's a lot of ways how this benefits and positively impacts those who receive these services. But one of the main ways that always sticks out for me is how they're able to really feel empowered and share with me and share with others about how they've learned about themselves, how they think, how they operate, what are their behavioral tendencies and habits, whether they're good or bad in the process of mental conditioning. So that's always an aha moment that when they've shared that with me, it's pretty rewarding to be just a part of that as well. Another rewarding part for me is I'm a Marine Corps veteran myself. So being able to, still work in a military environment and just in a different capacity, but still being among the lingo and the culture and all that good stuff is naturally rewarding for myself as well. So I'm a fish in water, I like to say. And then if I were to share just one thing, which is extremely tough because I can think of a couple, but I'll narrow it down for one thing for time's sakes. One thing that I wish I knew prior to finding a graduate program in this field, I would say just look at the opportunity. It's an exciting field. It's a lot of different avenues, a lot of potential. I would say really pay particular attention to the fact that it's called sport, exercise, and performance psychology. You know, so it's much bigger than sport. Betsy mentioned, you know, exercise in the introduction, obviously military with myself, performing arts, business, right, corporate personnel, and just trying to figure out what interests you there, and that might help dictate what kind of program, what kind of mentor you're looking for, and try to tailor your experience in doing that due diligence and homework on the front end. All right, so that's my piece. Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you for sharing the important work you're doing with the military. Our next presenter is Abby Keenan, who will talk about her role as a mental performance consultant with Intrepid Performance Consulting.
Thanks, Betsy, and great to be here with all of you and all the people that are going to watch this. I'm excited that you're looking at this field as a possible career for you. So I'm Abby Keenan. I am a certified mental performance consultant, or CMPC, in private practice in the Atlanta area. The current work that I do has two main parts, and so I'm an entrepreneur and a consultant. As the entrepreneur side, I own and operate a business called Intrepid Performance Consulting, and it involves a lot of different things. So things like creating and evaluating business strategy, lots of administrative work, the marketing and sales component, how we build relationships, and the financial piece, so how we manage that, just to name a few. When I think about being an entrepreneur, you know, a lot of it comes down to thinking about customers and impact that we're creating. And so I often think about how do we help people find us? And then when they do find us, how do we help them to work with us that's in a way that's really easy, but it's also professional and it's ethical, of course. How do we provide customer service from start to finish that's really excellent and creates a great experience? And really just how do we make this work meaningful? You know, we're impacting people's lives. And so we want to make sure that they're finding meaning in the work. On the consulting side, I teach mental skills to help people improve performance, fulfill their version of success, and to reignite happiness in their sport and beyond. So much of them have lost some of that joy, and so we try to help them get it back. Most often I work in an online one-on-one setting where I meet with athletes individually. And so it's kind of like specialized coaching is a good way to think of it. Typical clients for me are runners, swimmers, and triathletes. And then I also specialize in working with teenage student athletes, which of course involves a parent or caregiver or two. So incorporating them in a meaningful way. Athletes come to me a lot of the times when they're experiencing things like nerves or anxiety before or during their races. Maybe they've had one or more bad performances, or they have a lot of inconsistency in their performance. They're trying to figure that out. Perhaps training is going well, but competing not so much. That happens a lot. And then for the student athletes, they're looking to try to just make the most of their experience in high school or college. And sometimes they're struggling with managing time, for example. These are common things that come up. And also, I really believe that you don't have to be bad to get better. And so we look at working with athletes who are doing really well in their sport, but they're looking for a competitive edge. And so back to what Betsy mentioned at the beginning, that's where the mental skills come in, regardless if they're struggling or if they're looking to improve, or both. So we teach mental skills like self-talk, relaxation, goal setting, so on and so forth. And also, it's not just about the skills. To me, it's the person. That's the most important thing. That person who's sitting in front of me, they really matter most. And so much of my work really relies on building that professional relationship with each athlete that I get the opportunity to support. So getting to know them and meeting them where they are and figuring out if I'm the right person to help, and if so, how can I help? So when people work with us, yes, they do tend to improve athletically, which is great. And they have really cool results on the mental side. So they tend to learn how to understand themselves better and to appreciate who they are and what they do. They have more confidence. They're more positive. They find this joy back and they have some more motivation. They're able to manage stress, anxiety, nerves when it comes to training and competing. they feel more prepared. So when they come into various performance situations, they know what to do. They have a plan. And in general, I would say they tend to have just an improved mindset around their sport and what they're really capable of. So in addition to working one-on-one, I also do a number of other things. That's kind of the fun part of being an entrepreneur, is you get to have a lot of variety in your work if you want. So I facilitate webinars and workshops. I work with groups and teams. I've built curriculum. I establish and manage partnerships, do some mentoring through a university for those who are pursuing the CNPC credential. And then I also do contract work, particularly in the youth development space. So how did I get here? So as a competitive swimmer for 12 years when I was younger, you could describe me as delightfully average, frankly. And looking back, I know now I really could have benefited from working with the CNPC. And so that's kind of what led me to that teen space in part. I stumbled upon the field of sports psychology while at the University of Georgia in my junior year. And around that same time, I also became a staff member. So I started working with a summer youth leadership camp and really fell in love with team building and facilitation. Fast forward 13 years, both of those experiences have no doubt changed my life and really just set the course for my career. So I earned my bachelor's in psychology at UGA and then went to Florida State University for my master's in educational psychology with an emphasis in sports psych. It was really just thrilled to get a foundation of coursework. So understanding that theory and research to become a scientist practitioner, to really then have the opportunities for applied work to understand what does it really mean to do this and apply those principles in the intervention space. After graduating, I tried to set up some mental performance work in a sports academy. Didn't go so well, but I learned a lot in that. So that was really rewarding. And I worked as an academic advisor and challenge course facilitator at Florida State. And then to what Elmer has already spoken about, I worked as a cognitive performance coach. So I was at Fort Bragg in North Carolina and got to work with U.S. Army Special Operations there. And just one of the most rewarding experiences. And yes, a great experience for a master's level practitioner if you're interested in the performance side in the military. Lastly, I started my business while working full-time at a nonprofit that specialized in youth development and leadership and gained skills around social media, websites, photography, videography, and the like. Felt fortunate that eventually our business grew enough so I could take the leap into full-time entrepreneurship and consulting. So now 6.5 years in, we're still here, which is great, and we're growing. So I'm just excited to see what's next.
Well, thank you, Abby. You certainly have a variety of experiences, and appreciate you sharing those with us. Next, we have Sam Zizi, who is the Endowed Professor of Sport and Exercise Psych at West Virginia University, and Sam is our exercise psychology representative on the panel.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation. My name is Sam Zizi. I'm working at West Virginia University. I'm a professor there. This is my 21st year. I'm also a certified mental performance consultant through ASP, and I supervise some of our graduate students who are pursuing that credential as well. So I'm involved a lot in the academic side of sport and exercise and performance psychology. I also teach classes at the undergraduate and graduate levels as well. As part of my job at West Virginia, I'm also the co-director of the Center for Active West Virginia, where we aim to increase accessibility to physical activity in an equitable way for all West Virginia citizens. So then that's some of the reasons I've been invited to talk a little bit about the exercise psych pathways. So let me tell you a little bit about my career path. You might be familiar with the song "Take Me Home Country Roads" by John Denver. You know, I'm a West Virginia graduate. I'm a West Virginia resident. And that song is sort of like the state anthem of West Virginia. It's also a good metaphor for the shape of my career path because it has not been a direct route. And I would encourage anyone watching this to don't be afraid to take a curvy road every now and then, because you may find some very unexpected discoveries along the way. So if you've done any traveling or any good road trips, you know that those unplanned trips are sometimes the most enjoyable. So let me tell you a little bit about how I got into this position and some of the experiences that really helped me get there. I went to school at James Madison University in Virginia. I was an undecided major. I know that's probably not a thing now because you're encouraged to get into an actual major very early on, but that was the appropriate spot for me, and I'll tell you why. I thought I was going to go into computer science. I was kind of a math dork, and I thought I was going to make video games. I was really in love with video games and sports. I thought I'm going to make video games. Well, I took one semester of calculus, didn't have a very good instructor. That didn't go too well. So I changed my plan quite quickly. The good news was that same semester I had Psych 101, my first psych class. I fell in love head first, and I just started following that. I really had no idea what I was going to do with a psych degree. Some people in my family were slightly concerned about that, but at least one member was positive and encouraging that. But I simply just followed the bright light of psychology and dove all the way into my classes. At that time, I would have considered myself a poor writer and a nervous speaker, not someone you would necessarily consider to be a natural fit for a faculty member at a major university. But in a stroke of luck, I stumbled into a class that was taught by a former football coach, sports psychology, and it also had sports sociology. At that same time, in my psych major, I took abnormal psych. So what that allowed me to do is sort of see the difference in what that might be like to study or to learn more about. Should I go this clinical path, which is a very common path to go, or should I go into a different route and really focus my work into athletes? And I didn't really feel strongly about being a therapist, working in a clinical setting. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with athletes. I just knew that was the direction that I wanted to take. And then I applied to graduate school. I went into a master's program similar to Elmer's. I was in exercise science, but I had an emphasis in sports psych. This was a really important foundation to some of my exercise psychology work. I didn't know it at the time. It just turned out to be foundational experiences. I took exercise phys, motor learning, nutrition, got a chance to teach physical activity classes, stumbled my way through teaching tennis, weight training, archery, bowling, all these classic PE topics, and I grew to love teaching. I also grew to love the college environment, and I knew maybe I wanted to end up working as a career counselor for athletes or in some other way, maybe teaching life skills at a university. Later on in graduate school, I got better at writing, had great mentoring and supervision in my applied work. I got an opportunity to take counseling coursework, which was absolutely critical to my work. I got experience with Division I and II athletes, and I got experience working in a community exercise program where I did health behavior counseling with older adults who are much less healthy than the student athletes that I was working with, but I absolutely loved it. And I found that the theories and skills that I learned in counseling and sports psych courses, they translated really well over into health behavior counseling. So I still love both sport and exercise. Most of my work now is in applied exercise psychology or public health. And I just really enjoy helping clients engage with their physical activity and their health. And there's really great reward in helping someone overhaul their health behaviors. I also enjoy teaching students on how to help others too. This aspect of exercise psychology in the work is very similar to much of the performance or sport consultations that I've done. It uses similar skills, similar theories, but you have to gain experience working with populations that are not well, that are older, that are less fit, and that don't really come from this sport planet. So I'd encourage any student out there to sort of find some of those experiences and to get good mentoring doing that. One additional note I'll make before I wrap up is that a lot of times in exercise psychology in an academic setting, you would be expected to get some sort of grants to support from state or federal sources. And if you end up in an academic type of position like me and with an area of emphasis in exercise psychology, then you would be expected to get some sort of support. The good news is that there's a lot of support available for work in health behavior change. And I've engaged with insurance agencies, state agencies, and federal agencies, and that work is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. And so it is worth you pursuing it. So I would be happy that you would seek me out. You're welcome to contact me for additional information.
Well, thank you, Sam. I appreciate those insights into exercise psychology. Our final speaker is Kinza Gunter, who is a clinical sports psychologist with Gunter Psychological Services, LLC. And I will mention that we are honored to have Kinza as she represents she's the immediate past president of the Association for Applied Sports Psychology. Thank you, Kinza.
Thanks, Betsy, for the introduction. Thank all of you who are watching for joining. You've heard some excellent information thus far, and I'll do my best to add to this stellar lineup that has provided you with information about their career paths thus far. As you heard, my name is Kinza Gunter. I am a clinical and sports psychologist, and I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. I have a private practice, but I also have a few other consulting roles that you might be interested in hearing about. I'll be talking about private practice and pro sport. And so just to kind of give you the spoiler alert, I do work in the area of pro sport. I work with individual teams, but I also currently serve as the director of NBA Mind Health, which is the league's mental health and wellness platform. And so I'll tell you more about that in a moment. What I really want to say is that I think it's important for me to share with you my approach to the work, and then I'll also tell you about my educational journey. So I feel like I work in the area of sport and performance, but really I work with people. And I think what you've heard from all of the speakers on this call is that we certainly are interested in cultivating wellness and excellence with those that we work with, but it's really important to understand that even though you're working in sport and performance, you're always working with people, and you have to keep that at the forefront of your mind, because it is about the relationship. And it is about understanding that we don't want to reduce anyone to the performance that they are involved in, but we really want to honor the person that they are. And so I really think that's important thinking about this work. As I said, I'm a clinical and sports psychologist. So to break that down a bit more technically, I'm a licensed psychologist, which means I'm trained in working with issues around general mental health and general mental health concerns, whether that be diagnosable conditions such as depression or anxiety, or whether that's just helping people navigate personal challenges. And I'm also a certified mental performance consultant, and you've heard that phrase mentioned a couple of times here. And it's a certification specifically geared toward mental performance work that's offered by ASK, which is the organization that you heard about as well. And so I work with people in the area of both mental health and mental performance. And so when I think about my path, I'm gonna take one of those curvy roads that Sam just mentioned to you, because I started my career when I was in undergrad thinking that I was going to be a physical therapist. In terms of my personal athletic background, I was a swimmer and I played basketball. I was injured actually during my basketball career and worked with a physical therapist, which actually piqued my interest in thinking about that as a potential profession. And then similar to Sam, I went to school and I took organic chemistry, and that course quickly made me change my mind about what I wanted to do long term. And so I shifted from physical therapy, but again, I had taken psychology courses and really was in love with that area as well. So I shifted from physical therapy to focus on psychology. And kind of the rest is history, because really what the experience of being injured did was made me think about who's giving to these athletes when they are in positions where they need additional support or where they may not be able to contribute in the ways that they want to. So who's helping them navigate their lives beyond just the area of performance? And so I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I initially though thought I was going to be a forensic psychologist, so I have a master's degree in that. But then I quickly shifted back to sport, where I have a master's degree in clinical psychology, and my doctorate degree is in clinical psychology with a concentration in sport and exercise. And so in terms of my career path, post all of that education, and yes, it was a lot of education, but it's worth it because you need to have a good foundation given the work that we do. It's not just about talking to people, but it really is about using science, research, information that's grounded in solid theory to help people enhance their lives. And so my first job was working at a college counseling center where I served as an outreach coordinator. I also served as the liaison to athletics in that role. From there, I shifted out of college counseling into private practice. And as a result of being in my private practice, a lot of different opportunities opened up, which resulted in me working as a consultant within a university athletic department where I served there for about 6 years. And it also opened up the world of pro sport. And so I've worked with the NFL, and I currently work with the NBA, which includes the NBA, WNBA, NBA G League, 2K League, and we have a new Basketball Africa League. So I have the opportunity to work with all of those leagues, as well as others within the NBA family, with the sole purpose of promoting this idea that mental health is really foundational to performance. And really to think through the ways in which we're cultivating excellence and wellness by promoting mental health and helping people to strengthen their mental performance. And so in terms of what my days look like, as others have said, I don't have a typical day, but what it may include is individual work with athletes and performers. It also may include some teamwork, so facilitating educational sessions where we're talking about mental skills or talking about communication and leadership from a team perspective. And then it may also include just providing some consultation to organizations around how they can set up their systems, as Angel mentioned, to really be environments where wellness and excellence can thrive, right? Where you have environments that are healthy and allow room for people to become their best selves. And so I like to say that I work at the intersection of mental health, mental performance, sport, and culture, because I think you also have to take into account the cultural identities of the people that you're working with, the culture of the sport that they're participating in, and also the things that are happening in the world around us, because that impacts the athlete, the person of the athlete, and that too may impact how they show up in their performance spaces. And so at the end of the day, like I said, I'll circle back to what I said at the beginning. We're working with people. And so really, when I think about the work that I do, just trying to help people live their lives in the way that they want to, and cultivate wellness and excellence in all aspects, including mental health and mental performance. And so with that, I will pause and turn it back to Betsy.
Thank you so much, Kenza. Before I ask our panelists for final comments, I'd like to point out that each of the panelists is a certified mental performance consultant. It's also known as a CMPC with the Association for Applied Sports Psychology. The CMPC is a credential that indicates substantial education, experience, and knowledge in sport and performance psychology. For more information on this credential, you'll find a link to the Association for Applied Sports Psychology on the webpage where you found this video. And I also will take just a moment to point out that Brandon Harris, a member of this panel, is the current chair of the ASP Certification Committee. Now I'd like to ask our panelists to provide one last final comment, something maybe they wish that they knew before they went to grad school, or perhaps just an additional insight. Brandon?
All right, so I'm going to give it my best go here. One thing I would share is that I wish I would have done more of. Actually came from Sam here, and something that he said when I was excuse me, a grad student, which is don't ask, don't get. He used to say that a lot, and I think the idea was you have to be proactive, and the worst thing that can happen is someone is going to say no, and then you're not in any different of a situation than you previously were. So I would encourage people to ask questions, network, really put yourself out there and try to create opportunities to really get yourself involved in some of the pretty exciting aspects of what we do in our field.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. Angel?
Yeah, that was excellent, Brandon. I think the thing that comes to mind for me is like not look at my curiosity and not knowing, like Sam talked about earlier, not knowing what I wanted to be when I grew up as a detriment, right? Because that actually helped to lead to stumbling across this field of sports psychology. So embracing that curiosity and that exploration, I think is extremely important. And retrospectively, I see how it has helped me, but in the moment, when you're kind of not sure and you're constantly met with messages from other people that are constantly questioning you in terms of what do you want to do, and not being able to have an answer is actually an okay thing because it keeps you open to opportunities that you don't even know exist.
Thank you, Angel. Elmer?
Yeah, so one last insight I'd like to share. It's actually to reinforce, we've heard it a couple of times in this discussion so far, is the importance of the person that's performing, right? And the importance of relationships. I think that's incredibly important and worth mentioning again. Whatever area, whether it's exercise, military, sport, performing arts, we're a guest in somebody's world. And it really helps to connect and to relate to them by just understanding more of their context, more of their day-to-day. So as a quick example I can offer is for me in the military side, the military alphabet, military lingo, standard operating procedures, things like that. The content is phenomenal and it's great and exciting, but the context really allows it to be applicable, to stick, and to be something that is worth it to the individuals, to the groups, to the units, when they see that you've put in the work and that you value, again, that the person that they are, their being and their essence, and not just here's my performance and here's what I can offer to the world. So just reinforcing that point.
Okay, thank you, Elmer. Abby?
Great things so far. These are really good tidbits. For me, one thing that stood out to me when I was in grad school, I had a professor in our counseling class encourage every single one of us to go and find our own counselor or therapist or the like. And I didn't take that seriously for a while and should have. And that would be my advice is, especially if you are an athlete right now, consider if you are looking to get better or you are struggling with something that you've heard today on this panel, go find somebody, go find a CMPC or go find a licensed professional, depending on what your needs are, and have that experience. not only is it a win for you because it might help you to improve and understand yourself and just have that support. And also it might help you to understand what this work really looks like because you will sit in the client seat. For me, being in counseling has been tremendously helpful for my life. And I know a number of professionals and a number of friends, a number of colleagues who are consistently in a professional relationship with a therapist or a counselor or a coach or a business coach or somebody that's helping you. So we spend a lot of time helping other people. It's really important that we also help ourselves. And that could be something that you start much earlier than I did to have that support and to figure out if this is the space for you.
Thank you, Abby. Sam?
Oh, thank you so much for one more opportunity. I would like to echo those thoughts about relationships and focusing on the person. And likely most of what you all have already said is probably better with the nuggets I'm going to offer, but I'm going to offer them anyway. At least they're different. I have just 3 quick points. One, I really wish I knew how important quality mentoring and supervision was when I started out graduate school. I often tell our students right now, especially at the undergraduate level, that you cannot learn how to be good at what we do on YouTube. You need a mentor, you need a supervisor. So wherever you're heading off to graduate school, ask good questions of that person. Number 2, these are a little bit more specific about things I wish I would have learned. I wish I would have learned about public health and systems models of understanding behavior much earlier in my career. Probably could have saved me some time in working with clients. Sometimes we put too much emphasis only on the individual characteristics of that person. And finally, I wish I would have practiced mindfulness earlier in my career so that maybe some of the self-awareness I have gained would have come a little bit earlier and it could have saved myself some time and suffering on that. So that's
Okay.
it for me.
Thank you, Sam. Kinza?
Yeah, I agree. All of the things that you've heard thus far are wonderful. And so what I would say is do good work. And for me, that includes 3 specific things. The first is develop a solid foundation. It takes time to develop knowledge. It takes time to develop confidence. It takes time to develop expertise. So in developing that solid foundation, you need to be patient and soak up all the information and knowledge that you can, because you can learn something from everything. So that solid foundation includes patience and being a constant learner. That's really important. The second part of doing good work to me, again, goes back to respecting this work and respecting the field. We work in sport and we may be fans in the way that we want people to move forward and achieve success in the way that they define it, as Abby said. But remember, we're working with people who are excellent performers, not performers, not just performers, right? So really be mindful of that piece. And then the last thing I would say is always do your best, because the work that you do and how you show up, that's your real resume. That's what will allow your name to stay with people. Your memory will stay with people in a positive way, and your name will show up in rooms that you don't even know exist, simply by you being kind and always doing your best. So have a solid foundation, respect the field and the work, understand that it's about the people, and always do your best, again, because how you show up, that's your stamp that you leave. And so make it a good one.
Thank you, Kinza. Thank you all. Such great insights. I really appreciate that. In closing, I want to thank each of you for being a panel member. I think we've just had some really good information on careers in sport, exercise, and performance psychology. We've had just an impressive array of careers, and I hope that you in our audience have enjoyed today's presentations as much as I have. If you're interested in learning more about sport, exercise, and performance psychology, contact us. Visit the APA Office of Applied Psychology, where you'll find links to the APA Division 47, which is Sport, Exercise, and Performance Psychology. Goodbye and good luck pursuing your career in applied psychology.